Hi everybody, welcome. I'm Winter Wisthorn. Most of you know me as an animal communicator or intuitive interspecies communication expert. But many of you may not know that for the last over 20 years, maybe 25 years, I have been living and working with baboons, getting to know them, understanding them, appreciating them, celebrating them. And I'm here today to help you understand them a bit better so that we can start living together in peace and harmony. So thank you for being with me today, and I hope this presentation is going to ease some fears and open your minds and hearts to how we can live with all of nature. Thank you. So my intention today is really to help transform any fears that you may be carrying around baboons, to find some practical, heart-based and sustainable solutions to assist in creating a peaceful coexistence between us humans and the baboons who are sharing these spaces, specifically in wilderness and the surrounding areas of the garden route. I'd like to start just by giving you a brief overview of what I'm going to be talking about today. And I'm going to talk about the baboon management in the Cape. There's been quite a long history over the last 20-25 years, showing you what works, what doesn't work, and what has worked and what hasn't worked in the past, what that looks like. I want to talk to you a bit about baboon culture so that you understand them as sentient beings, as other people, animal people living in the space that you also choose to live in. Useful tips on how to be with them if they do enter your home, how to keep them away from your home, and just really how to enjoy the same spaces as they do. And to look at new ways forward. I'd love to have some sharings and suggestions from you, the audience, today, which if we all work together, I am really, really positive that we can come up with something that works for everybody, that is win-win-win for humans, for baboons, and for nature in general, including us as natural nature beings. Before I start, I'd like you just to rest your eyes on this image that's on the screen right now, this beautiful rainbow overlighting the Cayman's River Gorge in Wilderness Heights. And think back to what has brought you to living in this space, this place of natural beauty. What do you love about this place, living here in wilderness, in the garden route? Most people live here because of the tranquility, the beauty of nature. We feel wonderful when we sit and look out over the greenery, when we walk on the beaches, when we take hikes up in the forest, when we see the beautiful birds. Nature is full of beauty and wonder. But it can also be slightly uncomfortable and maybe a bit scary. So when we think about nature, we also need to include the spiders, the snakes, the scorpions, the caracal, the leopard. There are leopard in this area. And of course the baboons and the monkeys. We cannot separate them, just as we cannot separate ourselves from nature. As hard as we have tried over the years, we are still part of nature. So as you listen to this presentation, stay in that heart space of love and appreciation for all of nature. Open your heart, open your mind to how we can be part of this tranquil, peaceful landscape. In harmony, in peace, and in love. I'd like to speak about my experience of baboon management in the Cape. I arrived in the little seaside town of Kommetjie around about 1996-97. And it was my first experience living with baboons. I didn't know them. I was actually quite scared of them. They are very intimidating, scary looking animals if you don't know them. And because of that, I got to meet and know Jenny Trethowan and the late Wally Peterson, who was running KIAG, the Kommetjie Environmental Awareness Group at the time. And that came about because in 1990, the whole of the Slangkop troop in Kommetjie was killed by the authorities. And Wally was absolutely devastated by this because he was studying the baboons at the time, getting to know them, and he'd gone away and came back and they had been annihilated. So KIAG was formed to focus on ethical solutions. And through much trial and error, a baboon monitor project was formed, and that comprised of trained monitors from the community who would follow the baboons from their sleep sites in the morning right until they were going to bed at night, and make sure that they stayed out and away from the houses. And the way they did this was by using traditional herding techniques, so clapping hands, whistling, making their presence feel known so that the baboons would not attempt to cause damage on the houses. Occasionally the baboons would, of course, they're very clever animals, would manage to slip past and get into the houses for the easy food, and then the monitors were on hand to quickly move them on. This was a very successful project by and large, and Baboon Matters started managing it when KIAG was focusing on other environmental issues. And it went on very well for quite a few years, but Baboon Matters was only managing two troops, the Slangkop troop and the Dagama Park troop, because the money that was available from the city was only 500,000 Rand a year at that time. And then things changed. In 2012, the city committed to baboon management and giving a huge sum of 9 million Rand a year to baboon management. A tender process had to be followed, and unfortunately, Baboon Matters, who actually started the monitor project, lost the tender. And the management passed over to a new company called Nature Conservation Corporation. And they started working with very aggressive and lethal management techniques. So it changed the relationship of the baboons and the people. NCC managed the troops for only 1 year, and because the authorities thought, oh no, this isn't working, we need someone else to come in. And that someone else was the Human Wildlife Solutions. And their attitude was, and their method of management was to create a landscape of fear. And create a landscape of fear they certainly did. And not only for the baboons, but for the humans, for the domestic animals, and for all other wildlife that made their home on the Cape Peninsula. So they were using paintball guns from morning till night. They would, chase the baboons out of their sleep sites and literally keep them on the move all the time. They used bear bangers and virtual fences, proposed putting up electric fences. There were so many things that they tried. nothing seemed to work. And after 10 years of this, they lost the contract, and NCC came back in 2022. And they were still using aggressive techniques with paintball guns and herding, and the lethal management was still continuing. So this picture of the baboon on the left is William. He was the first baboon to be killed under the lethal management protocols that were put out. So what happened from 2022? The authorities realized that this still wasn't working, and although they'd been putting a lot more money than 9 million rand a year into this project, they thought they would put a last-ditch attempt of 20 million rand, and this was in 2023, and for the following 18 months, the money dries up at the end of the year. So at the end of 2024, there will be no formal management for the baboons in the Cape Town urban edge. In the meantime, a couple of communities have become proactive. So Green Group Simonstown started working with baboon monitors, much like the original monitoring project that Baboon Matters led. And they started monitoring as a little splinter troop with these traditional herding techniques, not really herding, but just keeping an eye and moving them out of the towns, the Simonstown Central and the houses. There's another organization that came about, Baboon Watch, Western Cape, started working with the assistance of Baboon Matters on the Constantia group, a split troop in Constantia in Cape Town. These are all community-led projects, and they are successful, and we are hoping that these kind of projects will actually spread out and expand into other villages and communities that are taking responsibility for their own baboons. It's something that it seems we cannot rely on the municipalities and the authorities to do with any kind of skill or thought. So now, looking at all this fear-based management over the last so many years, and what has not worked and why it hasn't worked. So the first thing is killing the leaders, killing the dominant males. All this does is disrupt the troop, and after a while, a new male will inevitably move in. I found an incredible example when I visited Pringle Bay only last week, and interestingly, a resident had killed one of the dominant males, and 2 days later, a male who had left the troop 9 months ago reappeared and moved back in to take control. He knew what had happened, and he knew that a new leader was needed in that troop. He had moved away from his natal troop to one of the neighboring families, baboon families and troops. He hadn't been seen for 9 months until this dominant male, whose name was Joey, was killed recently. So that's a very good case in point. What also doesn't work, killing or removing whole troops. I spoke about the initial cull event in 1990 in Komaki, but there was something very recent happened in 2020 in Scarborough, where a whole troop was removed gradually. So many of them were killed by the authorities. Some of them were killed by human accidents, car accidents, and actually injuries. And there were 4 females left, and they were staying in the village because they felt safe. They felt there was food there. But people weren't happy because, of course, they were going into the houses and going into the restaurants and the waste and everything. But a survey found that the people did not want them killed. So what happened to those Baboons, they were taken away, they were removed, and they were taken to a sanctuary in Mpumalanga and to live out their days in a cage. So these wild, beautiful wild animals are now sitting in a cage, if they're still alive, in Mpumalanga, thousands of kilometers away from their home range and their hometown. Aggressive monitoring. This definitely does not work. All it does is cause stress, and it increases the aggression of the troops. I've seen that in the resident troops of Komaki and the Cape. And the more aggressive they are treated by humans, the more likely they are to be aggressive in a conflict situation. So hurting baboons with paintball guns and keeping them on the move with no rest is really disruptive and causes more aggression. Baboons also do weigh up the risk and reward. So they will look at easy food, and if there's a risk if their risk is really, really bad, they won't try and get the food. But the food is so tempting for them, and they will want to take it. So they will get hurt, and then of course the stress and the fear and the aggression starts. Shooting at, injuring baboons, one, it's completely illegal, even if it's a paintball gun or a pellet gun. It causes a lot more stress when baboons are in pain, or sort of have disabilities. They are more vulnerable, they're more likely to go for the easy food. Pain causes aggression, as we know. So really, injuring and shooting baboons is no solution at all. So now let us look at what has worked and why it's worked. We're looking at more heart-based management, which is the opposite of fear-based management. A few points: community vigilance and communication. So communicating with your neighbors, being vigilant about where the baboons are, being aware and conscious of their sounds that they make when the dogs are barking. Are the baboons around? If you don't have dogs, just being aware of that feeling of when there is a baboon around. Be in tune with your environment. Taking responsibility for your home and for what I call your place in nature, in this natural environment. Good waste management is vital. So separate your food. It actually is illegal, most people don't know it, to put your wet waste, your food waste, in with your rubbish in your black bags, and certainly in your recycling. Food and garden management. So if you are growing vegetables and fruit trees and you don't want the baboons in your garden, you're going to have to cage them in. And compost, many people have compost heaps because of the sort of self-sustainable lifestyle that we want. And make sure that the compost is secure in compost bins, or if it is an open compost, make sure it is far away from your home and other people's homes, so that the baboons or monkeys can come through and go through, forage through the compost, but without going into the houses or near the houses. That depends on your unique situation. Security, make sure that your windows and doors are well locked, especially when you go out, and that food is hidden, so draw blinds and things like that. Domestic animals, take responsibility for your animals. Don't let them roam free into the forests where they could get hurt. Municipality waste management is a big issue and does need to be addressed in baboon affected areas. Speak to your municipality, speak to your ward councillor about making sure that the waste is collected as early as possible on those days. Being conscious of baboon behavior and troop movements. So that is again being vigilant and aware I'll speak more about that in the suggested solutions. What has worked is trained baboon monitors, following and observing and keeping the baboons out of the houses. Intuitive interspecies communication. When I was working with Baboon Matters and the monitors, I taught them how to intuit and be in tune with the baboons, which many of them already were, to know where they wanted to be that day and to assist in their needs as well as keeping them out of the village. So it really is about understanding. And of course, my story I'll speak now about an experience with baboons in Renendale will show how IIC can work. Community awareness and sharing information. So having WhatsApp groups, talking to your neighbors, having a sort of early warning system when the baboons are in the area, that has worked. And this is all the opposite of fear-based management, and I call it heart-based management, as I've already said. Intuitive interspecies communication, or IIC, is my expert area. And in 2014, I was called by a group of very concerned residents in Renendale about the seemingly very aggressive and uncontrollable behavior of the baboon troops in that area. It seemed as if the baboons had ramped up their presence and their aggression over the previous 18 months. And the people who really cared about the baboons were at a loss. I went to meet with the residents. I had a meeting to find out what their concerns were. And most of the residents were actually concerned about the welfare of the baboons because people had started hurting them, shooting at them. And we wanted to find some ethical solutions, peaceful solutions. So I agreed to hold a half-day workshop. It was attended by about 40 people who were very open, perhaps skeptical, but open to trying this method of connecting and communicating with the baboons to find out the best way forward. And to cut a long story short, the workshop was a success. I taught people how to start connecting and communicating intuitively with the baboons that they knew, and how to find out what was going on. Something quite surprising happened when I was in the workshop and I was communicating with one of the troop leaders, who you can see from the photograph here. He showed me an image, and this is how we receive information from animals, is through images, words, sounds, feeling, and perhaps sometimes an inner knowing. But I got a clear image of a baboon body hung up and being skinned, as if being prepared for meat. And then I heard the words, "There has been an abomination." Now this really shocked me because I know South Africans do not eat baboons. It is a taboo for South Africans to eat baboon flesh because they are so like us. You may not know, but the difference in our DNA is only 6%. So when I saw this, I was hesitant to speak it out in the community, but with my experience in IIC, I know we have to speak of these things that we are shown because that is the message that the baboon wanted to give us. And when I expressed this, the community was very aware that there had been illegal poaching in the so-called safe spaces of the baboons in the forests in the national park. And so how do we address this? So my feeling was the ramping up of the behavior of conflict in the area was mainly because of this abomination that had occurred. But it was also because of increase in population certainly in the informal settlement, and also the development of the bigger houses in the area. There'd been a new power station, an Eskom power station in the area. There'd also been a lot more activity in the forest, so logging and cutting down trees. So the baboons were no longer feeling safe in their safe national park. So we addressed this there was a sandparks lady who was very, very helpful at the time. And there was a commitment to do snare sweeps that people could do on their own lands bordering the forest and also by sandparks themselves. This all helped to ease the conflict, and ease it did. I also worked personally with a couple of individuals who were having particular problems in their homes and gardens, and that the incidences of baboon conflict eased significantly after they had negotiated and communicated with the baboons. The one thing that I regret was that there wasn't more follow-up workshops in the area, because over the years new people moved in, other people left, and the behavior of the baboons and the conflict went up and down. But checking in more recently with the original people who contacted me, the incidents had never got as bad as it had when they initially called me. So in my books, that is really a success. So if you're open to working in this way with baboons, it really does work, and it is possible to communicate with all animals. Just a brief look at baboon culture and the way they live and behave in their families and in their troop systems. So their daily priorities, from my experience, are two main things. Food to survive, just like all of us. They need to have a good meal each day to live for the next, and protection of their families. And this is very similar to humans. What is not similar to humans is that baboons do not share their food. There is no sharing. It is always the dominant males and females who get the food first. So when humans give their food to a baboon, they are showing submissive behavior. And that is where perhaps our relationship with baboons has gone wrong, because we get incensed when baboons take our food. But there is a history of humans feeding baboons, and baboons remember that. So when baboons take food, they feel it is their right, and obviously we get upset by that. And if we try and take it back from them, that's when problems would arise, because they will not easily let their hard-won food go. It's important to them. The safety of the troop is paramount. So when they're in a situation that is incredibly dangerous and there's risk of life, they will retreat if possible. So they are not out to attack people, to wage war on people and our lifestyle, our domestic animals. When there's danger and they are able to retreat, they will. They show signs of aggression only when they feel trapped, or when their family is threatened, or they are threatened and they cannot retreat. So that is really important to remember, that if you approach a baboon with anger and aggression, if they cannot retreat, their last resort is to be aggressive back. And that can be dangerous for everyone, for baboons, for humans, and for our beloved animal friends that live with us. Another thing about baboons that people perhaps don't realize is that they enjoy the same environment as we do. They like foraging on the low-lying areas, spending time in the wilds of Africa, it would be the savanna areas where when there's vast troops of baboons. If you've ever been to the Kruger or to Addo or any of the national parks, you will see huge troops of baboons spread out in the low-lying areas. They only sleep up high in the cliffs. And what has happened in today's society, and certainly in this area, is that we have built our houses, our living spaces, and our picnicking and sort of leisure spaces are in the same spots that baboons like to forage and have foraged historically since the beginning of their existence. And that is where the conflict and the problems can happen. Baboons enjoy when they're seaside baboons, especially Cape baboons, love actually going to the beach and foraging for mussels, and they eat the shark eggs and the kelp. So really, that is why we come into their space and they come into ours so very often. Here you see baboons walking on the beach, being on the beaches, happily doing what they need to do. And if they're left alone and people are aware of their behavior and their habits around food, we could live peacefully with them. Of course, there's a picture of a baboon eating the proteas and the fynbos and the natural foods on the mountains where people like to walk and hike as well. On the screen now is a poster put out by Baboon Matters Trust, some very useful tips about living with baboons. It's really designed for baboons on the urban edge of Cape Town, of the peninsula, and some of it is difficult to apply to those of us living in wilderness in a lot more wild area. But there are some very, very key points, and one of them that leapt out at me when I was rereading these tips is that we are very quick to think we're being attacked when a baboon wants something from us. So snatching an apple out of your hand may feel like an attack, but it is not an attack. It really is just a dominant way of getting food from you. And if you try and take that food back, he will fight for it. He will try and take it back, not necessarily hurting you, but perhaps pushing you out of the way and grabbing the food. So the best thing to do is let him keep the food. If you're worried about your children being in the garden having a picnic and the baboons come, teach them this. Teach them just to leave the food and stay calm and go back inside the house if they can. So it's really good to understand the nature of these animals that we live so closely with. Baboon Matters has put out quite a lot of information about baboons, and you can download all this information from their website. This is one way of just getting to understand baboon behavior and baboon culture a little bit more. And I think that'll go a long way to helping ease the fears that many people have about baboons. Many of you who live in wilderness and the garden route areas may be saying, but those tips are designed for Cape Town city dwellers that are on the urban edge and are not practical to implement here in the garden route. So I've put together some useful tips specifically for this area and for the baboons as we know them. And in my experience, this really works very, very well. A very important thing to do is to stay calm. If you are calm, the baboons will be calm, your domestic animals will be calm, and there's less likelihood of any conflict. If you're worried about your dogs, really train your dogs to recall. Or if that is impossible, make sure that there's a secure area around your house where their territory is clearly defined and the baboons can get away from your dogs easily. Remember, aggression only occurs when they are feeling trapped or threatened. So if you have a pack of dogs that are going to chase the baboons right into the forest, into their territory, that is when the baboons could turn and then attack. But they have to be very, very threatened in order to do that. So really take responsibility for your animals and for the area that you are living in. There are caracals around. We keep our cats in at night to stop them from being hurt. So take responsibility for your domestic animals. Dogs, train them not to chase baboons. And if you feel calm and start understanding baboon behavior, your dogs will understand. They pick up on our energy just like the baboons do. Teach your children about baboons. Teach them that they are safe if the baboons are there, even though they're scary looking. And they are scary looking. I mean, they're very intimidating. Teach your children to drop any food that they have with them, to move quietly out of the way so that the baboon can quickly take the food and move on. There is no risk to your children if they learn and understand about baboons. A very easy way to get baboons to move away quickly from the garden or in the home is water pistols or hose pipes. They hate water. They hate being sprayed with water. It won't hurt them, but it's unpleasant and they will stay away. Very important to hide all food away from sight. So baboons will look into the windows to see what is on offer today. And if they manage to get in when there's temptation of food on the tables, they will try and get in. Some of the baboons have learned how to open doors and windows and sometimes will even break them, depending on the experience that they've had in the past. If they've managed to get food from your house once, they will try again and again. So really, it's important to hide all food away from sight. Baboons use their eyes more than their sense of smell. Close the blinds and curtains and lock windows and doors when you go out. Make sure that there's no way that the baboons can see in or easily open a window or door. Some baboons have worked out that the handles, the straight handles on the door, are easy to open. You just have to push down and push out. But the round handles are really difficult for them to open easily. So if you are having problems with baboons opening doors like that, change your handles. If they do come in and you are there, make sure that there is an escape route. So go around and open other doors for them, because often we come across a baboon, we get a fright, we're in the doorway, they get a fright, they want to try and push past you and they might push you out the way. So move away from the doorway and open any other doors or windows so that they can escape easily. The mess that happens often in a house when the baboons have been in when you've been out, they've often got in through a small window, and perhaps 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 baboons have got in. There may be a bit of a food fight inside, because remember the food culture, baboons don't like to share the food, and if one's taking the easy food from another, they might get a fright, start fighting, and then it's not easy for them to get out again. So because there's only that small window open that they've got through. So really make sure that everything is secure and hidden when you are out. That will really stop the baboons trying to get in. They will move on and see if there's another place to go for the easy food. One of the complaints that people make is damage to gutters and roofs and satellite dishes. This is an image of our Wi-Fi satellite dish where we have put kai apple thorns around to prevent the baboons from playing and damaging. And this really, really works much better than barbed wire or spikes, because they naturally know what kai apples are and they avoid them because they're very sharp, very spiky, and they don't need to try and figure out the barbed wire or the spiky metal. So if you want some more tips, please go to Baboon Matters, and there's whole lists of other things that you can clearly do to prevent baboons from entering your home and being able to live more easily with them. One of the things that really helped when Baboon Matters was in charge of the monitoring project in the peninsula is education, and they brought out a wonderful little colouring in book called The A to Z of Baboons, with Mikey Mohican, who was a character, a little young juvenile that was very well known and recognized because of his Mohican style haircut or hairstyle. As you see with the map here, the troops were very, very well known and are still quite well known on the peninsula. And that is something that perhaps we need to look at in wilderness areas and the garden route areas. Let's get to know our troops, the numbers in our troops, the personalities in our troops, their home ranges, where they move, how they move. And that will really help us to help us to live with them more easily. Through all my experience with living and working with baboons in Cape Town and the Cape Peninsula, and then moving up to Wilderness Heights, I realized that wilderness is unique and we need unique solutions. So many of the residents here want to grow vegetables and be self-sustainable. And we're living in a place where baboons historically have roamed and been able to forage in the fynbos. There's been huge farms, the macadamia nut farms up on Seven Passes Road, and that has taken huge areas of natural foraging away from the baboons. So there isn't as much food as there used to be. The troop sizes, although some people think that they're huge troops, actually the troops that we experience in wilderness are quite small, 15 to 20 individuals in a troop. Many of those you'll see are babies. Sometimes you say, oh gosh, they're having so many babies, the troops numbers are increasing. But the mortality rate of babies is huge. Very few of those babies will survive to grow up to be adults. So, and actually, when we have a look at the history of baboons and baboon numbers, they are definitely decreasing in number. The troops are much smaller. Their space to survive are decreasing because of all the development. So let us help the baboons, because they are dwindling and they are an important part of the biodiversity in our beautiful, beautiful wilderness areas. Speaking to wilderness residents, I'd like to just give a brief summary of the troops, the baboon families that live in the Wilderness Heights area. So the Erica Road troop is the one that I know quite well. They come to visit, if not daily, then at least once or twice a week, especially in nowadays. And there are about 17 baboons, including babies. And those babies have increased the numbers from about 14 last year. It's normally seems to average around from 12 to 15, 16, 17. And we'll see how those change over the next few years. The Watsonia troop, which is a little bit further up in Wilderness Heights, is around about 20, maybe a little bit more, maybe a little bit less. I don't know that troop very, very well, but they do frequent Watsonia Road. Now, the most recent troop to be seen in wilderness are the Caiman's troop, and they're the ones that normally you would see crossing the N2, where all the terrible roadworks or huge roadworks are happening at this current time. And that seems to have pushed the Caiman's troop up towards Remskun Road. When I met them coming down Heights Road very recently, I counted around about 16, and that included 6 to 8 babies. We easily moved them back up the road so that they didn't go back down into the village or go down into the village to try and find the easy food. And they seem to be sleeping down below Remskun Road at the moment, not causing any stress for the last couple of weeks. So we just need to keep an eye on our troops. And if you're living in any of those areas, I'm sure if you're not already vigilant about baboons, please do start listening, become familiar with their sounds, their wahoos, their little murmurings when they are together and greeting each other. And that'll go a long way to assisting how we live and how we know the baboons that live in the same areas as us. So when everything blew up on the community WhatsApp groups about baboons coming into the area and raiding houses and attacking dogs, I started looking at a way to start assisting people, hence this presentation. And also I put my head together with a couple of other people, Dr. Chloe Jabois and a few others, to see what can we do, new ways forward. The old ways have not been working, and so let us find new ways as a community to start learning how to live with baboons in an easy way that is not going to lead to this huge divisiveness in the community and huge conflict. So one of the things we thought was a community baboon watch, so either people on the ground volunteering to see where the troops are when they are in the areas. Obviously a WhatsApp group, they are very effective, maybe particular WhatsApp groups for the road that you're in and the area that you're in for those 3 different troops. Trained baboon officers to assist and educate people. So maybe, baboon guardians or baboon guides perhaps is a good word to use for them. So people who know baboon behavior, so when there is an incident with baboons coming into houses, they can be on call to assist the residents and to help educate people on how to change things in their homes so that the baboons are not attracted and cannot get into the house easily. Perhaps it's an opportunity to involve Sandpark's honorary rangers. We have quite a few in the area. We've looked at perhaps some non-invasive academic research to get to know the troops, to see the numbers, to see their home ranges, to see their preference of where they like to forage if left to their own devices, where they hang out the most. Citizen science is always very, very helpful. So perhaps an app. There are other apps where we can sort of just note down when the baboons are visiting, how many baboons we see, just to be vigilant and to be cognizant of where the baboons are and how they behave, and to be able to share that with others within our community. So workshops, I've spoken a little bit about IIC. It is something that we can all learn. We can all learn how to connect and communicate with other animals. And this isn't selective. This is across species. Chloe Jabois does a lot of work with communities with elephant conflict and trying to live harmoniously with wildlife in Zimbabwe. And she's speaking about the future triangle approach, which is a vision, challenge, opportunity. So that's workshops on how do we look at our vision. How do we look at our challenges and what is the opportunity for future? So visioning the future and how it could be if we change our hearts and minds. And then I would say regular community gatherings to Heartstorm whenever challenges come up. So anyone who is interested in living with baboons in this way and educating people and helping people, assisting people in this way, let us get together and really start assisting these amazing furry cousins of ours. And just a big thank you to everyone who has watched and listened to this presentation. Just want to do a few thanks to all the people who contributed their photographs over the years for Baboons. Many of them were for Baboon Matters Trust by Jenny Trefouwen, Brett Cole, Lee Slibber, Sally Sivright, and Johan Bart on the Renendal Baboons. If you need to get hold of me and want to speak about how you can help, please email me on winter@animaltalkafrica.co.za. And just to announce that Animal Talk Africa is now a trust, a public benefit organization, and a non-profit organization. So one of the projects that we are wanting to focus on are baboons in the Garden Route area. So please, if you'd like assistance and help or want to donate to the trust, please contact me as well. Thank you so much, everyone.